If called to testify in the Bryan Kohberger case, could Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funke take the Fifth Amendment? That is a question some of our viewers have, and we're going to take a look right now. What a twist in the Bryan Kohberger case that would be. Hi, Attorney Andrew Myers, and with me for this episode is Courtney.
Hi.
How are you today, Courtney?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So we have a ton of questions, our top 10 questions of the week from our viewers and subscribers, and we're going to take them in order. First, we're going to take a look at the Karen Reed case, and then we will take a look at the Bryan Kohberger case. So hold that thought on the Bethany Funke and Dylan Mortensen question. But Courtney, let's take a look at our questions that we have this week. Number 10, Mr. Brennan appears to think that if he says methodology enough times, Beetlejuice will pop up and actually give him some evidence of guilt. This guy is getting $75,000 and is actually worse than Lally, who even thought that was possible. So, all right, we don't like personalization, we don't like name calling, but this is just the type of questions that we get on our channel. We get a whole ton of questions, and we ask people to kind of keep it professional and don't do the name calling or disparaging thing. But Courtney, that's just kind of thing we get.
At Kelly, my favorite moment was Alessi's last words, where he corrects Brennan's use of hashtags to hash values, and the look on David Yannetti's face at that moment. Love Alessi's ability to explain and argue. And to answer your question whether the motion to dismiss the case will be allowed, only when hell freezes over. Thank you, guys. Loved hearing your views on the craziness.
Yeah, I do remember that. I didn't even expect it, but yeah, when the expert was being discussed by Hank Brennan, he did. You know, sometimes you get nervous in court and you do misspeak, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But he called the technical underpinnings of the whole thing hashtags, and that is incorrect. It's a hash value. So I don't know. Our viewers aren't willing to give anyone the benefit of the doubt, are they? Okay. I was a computer forensic technician. It does require a lot of detailed chain of custody and use of multiple types of software because there are things that may not show up in another piece of software. So that's why you run it on multiple types. I've worked in e-discovery for over 15 years, and now I work with the legal investigations team for the company where Jen made her search. Now, we don't know if this is true, but it's an interesting comment. So the tab thing is comical. I really wish they would get a Google engineer because Google constantly updates like every 3 seconds. So regardless of whether that tab was open before, it's not going to read incorrectly. That's just flat out stupid. And it's an insult to everyone's intelligence that they're pushing that. You know, and we've gotten some other comments that people say, why don't you get a real IT person in? Well, we've had people on both sides of this case tell us that they were the expert and they knew what was correct and what wasn't correct. But you know what? All we're doing is kind of reporting on what these quote unquote experts say in open court. So I don't know. It's kind of a conundrum, don't you think?
At Summer Bright 2769. I'm in the UK. I think the people here are very fascinated by the number of crimes in America. But in this case, there's something extremely fishy that has fascinated me from the outside looking in. All of the prosecution witnesses they came across as if they're hiding behind their names and uniforms in this particular community. Fascinating. And we've touched base on that before, and obviously they are hiding behind their uniforms. And
well, to say the least, the testimony was, a head shaker. And trial number 2.0 is coming up, and remains to be seen whether the witnesses will be, any different in that trial. The next slide or the next comment is from Matt. 1074. Gretchen Voss should go to Otis Air Force Base and dump her notes. She won't get in trouble. And that goes back to Brian Higgins dumped his phone and the SIM card in a dumpster at Otis Air Force Base out on Cape Cod, never to be seen again. So Gretchen Voss, of course, is the reporter for Boston Magazine that wrote a lengthy article which attracted a lot of people to this case. And she was ordered to turn over her tapes and also her personal notes. And finally, after fighting back, the court said, all right, we're not going to make you give your personal notes, but everything else did have to be turned over to be viewed by the attorneys only. Oh, so our feature that we do every week on the Karen Reed case, The World is Watching. These are all of the countries from whom we have received comments. And this week we have one new country from the Philippines. Somebody from the Philippines commented and said they are watching Karen Reed. So don't let anyone tell you that, people all over the world are not watching the Karen Reed case, because they are. And we have received multiple comments from a lot of these countries, like I mentioned before, Australia and New Zealand, for whatever reason, and also Wales and Scotland. A lot of people in those countries are following the Karen Reed case. And within the last week, somebody from Brazil said, yeah, we're following it too. I already had Brazil on the list, but so this case has really attracted a lot of attention.
Yeah, it's the true crime and the corruption. People are into it.
The people all over the world are watching this case, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So that's it for our comments on the Karen Reed case. Now we turn to our comments on the Bryan Kohberger Idaho 4 case.
At Daryl Watkins 729. Question: can Bethany Funke and Dylan Mortensen plead the fifth on the stand?
Wow. When I first saw this comment, I said, oh, come on. And I almost passed it by. Then I was at the gym and I was thinking, you know what? No, I can't pass this by, because there's so much mystery and there's so much, head scratching over Bethany Funke and Dylan Mortensen. What happened? What did they do? What did they do?
What did they know?
And what did they know? What didn't they know? Of course, there were the two surviving roommates at 1122 King Road that night. And we know that at least Dylan Mortensen gave a lengthy statement, and Defense Attorney Ann Taylor turned to her notes and compared what Dylan Mortensen had said in her statement to what was in the probable cause affidavit, indicating that the probable cause affidavit didn't really give an honest, true, correct picture, where Dylan Mortensen admitted at some point she didn't know whether she was dreaming or it really happened. She said she had a bad memory of the thing. So her credibility has been kind of called into question. And, this has been something that has been bothering a lot of people that have been watching this case. And we have to go back to a statement by the Mocsow, Idaho Police Department back on November 29th, 2022, not long after the November 13th crime. This is what the statement said. On November 13th, the surviving roommates, meaning Bethany Funke and Dylan Mortensen, summoned friends to the residence because they believed one of the second floor victims had passed out and was not waking up. At 11:58 a.m., a 911 call requested aid for an unconscious person. The call was made from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones, and we all now believe it was Dylan Mortensen. The call was made from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones inside the residence. Multiple people talked with the 911 dispatcher before Mocsow police arrived at the location. Officers entered the residence and found two victims on the second floor and two victims on the third floor. And a lot of people have said, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if Dylan Mortensen said, according to the brief statement that Ann Taylor read, and also the probable cause affidavit, if she opened her door 3 times and if she heard scuffling upstairs and she heard cries, how could Dylan Mortensen go into this frozen shock phase and at the same time call other people and we think, we're not 100% sure, but Ethan Chapin's brother, Hunter Chapin, that's what has been said. We're not 100% sure on that, but it's the police in this statement that we're looking at right now pointed out that before she called 911 or anyone called 911, they called other people and other people came to the house. And so, one of the biggest mysteries in this case, that if I were a juror, I would want to know, who were these multiple people that talked to the 911 dispatcher? Had they gone into the house? Is there evidence that they took out of that house? Did they spoliate evidence? Did they track their shoes into that house? Did they go up and down the stairs? I mean, how is it that we have one bloody footprint outside of Dylan Mortensen's door and not a whole bunch of footprints that at least were not mentioned in the probable cause affidavit? That doesn't mean they didn't exist. So so many questions about this. And so could Dylan and Bethany take the fifth? Well, it seems to me that obviously law enforcement is treating them with kid gloves. They need them because they were the only ones home. They were the only ones that had any kind of observations at all. But one of the other odd things about the whole thing is that, and this was in the Daily Mail on February 5th of 2023, that Ethan's sister-in-law, and apparently this has been verified, I don't know, but had said, yes, I hope it will come out what Dylan heard. Dylan supposedly called all the girls in the house after the crying and screaming stopped, and no one answered. And she still didn't get the police. She needs to explain herself and her actions that night. Makes sense to me that they would have to explain their actions. I mean, and would they take the fifth? What did they do? Were they accomplices? Did they clean up the crime scene, which is tampering with a crime scene? That's a felony. And so the problem, though, for law enforcement is if the two girls plead the fifth and don't want to testify, what's left of their case? I mean, they've got the little teeny tiny shred of DNA on a sheath, but does that make it in? I don't know. So I thought that was a good question. I thought that was a really good question by our commenter, and the answer would be, would to prevent that from happening, would law enforcement work out some kind of immunity deal for the two girls? I don't know. Good question. There's no answer right now. So then we have to go to our next viewer comment, which would be the Dollywood 6549. In California versus Joseph D'Angelo, the state was very open about how they used 23andMe to find him. The distant relative who offered her DNA even came out and confirmed how happy she was that she consented to the DNA being used for these reasons. The secrecy makes me think that Bryan Kohberger's sister, in fact, did not authorize its use for this reason, and that it is where I have a major concern. First, our data, and now our DNA is being sold to the highest bidder. Well, that's kind of scary, isn't it? If it's true.
Very, but we talked about that earlier, and I think although people may not like it, I think it's the 23andMe is good to put people's DNA in the system to help solve unsolved crimes or Jane or John Doe's.
Well, the issue being raised by Ann Taylor and her fans is that people give their DNA for the purpose of, finding their family ancestors and going up and down the tree. And people that go to these services have a checkbox where they can check not to have this shared with law enforcement. So that's the issue to the FBI, where it had agreed that it would not go into these databases, especially where people had agreed that they did not want their DNA shared. Does that go down the chain and violate Bryan Kohberger's rights? And that's the question that the court has to deal with. My guess is that they'll say no, but we don't have that. As we're recording this, we don't have that yet. And I guess the other issue that's out there is, and I raised this, and we always get nasty comments when I say this, but I say it anyhow, and that is that anytime you put anything out there, it's open, it's free. We were talking about my computer before. We think somebody hacked into it again. Somebody hacked into my bank account. 3 times now I've had health insurance companies send me a notice that, we had a breach of data, and your personal data may have been given to other people. And that's scary when that happens, and it's happened to me 3 times. So my feeling is that, you can check off all the boxes you want, but once you give data to people, it's out there.
Right.
It's just out there. And I think that's the side issue in this case. It is wrong that our data is sold. It is wrong that the highest bidder can get our DNA. But in 2025, I hate to say it, and I know I'll get nasty comments. That's just the way it is.
At Gmail. The most glaring thing about the sheet is where it was found, under Maddie. It just screams plant. If you dropped a sheet, wouldn't it end up on the floor or on top of something? If there was so much blood, wouldn't the sheet be saturated if it was under or beside the victim? The sheet makes no sense. Plus, the way the prosecution keeps delaying discovery for 2 years adds to the suspicion.
Oh, well, there are a lot of issues in there. A lot of issues in there. There really are a lot of issues. And, to think if the sheath had nothing on it except for a speck of DNA, that would be just beyond belief. But we don't know that. They really, in the probable cause affidavit, they didn't really go into a detailed description of what was on the sheath. Other than that, they did find this one speck of single source DNA. So if that's true, yes, that would be a problem. The other issue, if you dropped a sheath, would it end up on the floor? I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. I've never knifed anybody, so I don't know. I'm just trying to think about, an improvisational skit and somebody dropping a sheath. It could go anywhere, couldn't it?
Right. Could have held it in like the other hand and used the other hand to do what they were doing with the knife, but
it is phony. I'm not going to say it's phony. It is unusual that the sheath was found where it was found, and it is unusual if it didn't have anything else on it.
correct. Yeah. Strange.
That's a little bit strange. But the final point in this comment, the way the prosecution keeps delaying discovery for 2 years adds to the suspicion. Well, it's true that it's been alleged that the prosecution has not been forthcoming with all of their discovery materials, but that's not necessarily the reason for the delay. The delay is that Bryan Kohberger waived his right to a speedy trial, and that's on him. Ann Taylor wanted to be thorough. She wanted to get all the discovery information, and that's normal. I mean, if I'm defending a client who's facing the death penalty, I'm going to do everything I can to save him. I mean, that's her job. That's what you're supposed to do. And I mean, yes, I'm going to pull out all the stops. And so you really can't blame the prosecution. You really can't blame Ann Taylor and her crew for doing what their job is. It's one of those things. And a long time ago, we did a slide comparing other cases and how long it took them to get to trial. And one of them was the Daybell case. One of them was the Vallow case.
Wow. Yep.
It just took forever. One of them was the suitcase Sarah Boone case. That was, I believe, 5 years from the time that Jorge Torres was found deceased in the suitcase until her trial. So it's not that unusual. I know the families, have a right to know what happened in this case, and they're all, waiting on the edge of their seats. But it's just the way it is, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. The next slide is from Deborah Belt 718. This judge is right, and he knows also that something is very wrong with the IgG and the DNA and other DNA not tested. And Dylan never said any of the stuff Brett Payne said in the PCA, and now cannot produce that very DNA. Well, it's not necessarily true that Dylan never said any of the stuff in the PCA. It's just that the full context that she thought she might have been dreaming. She couldn't tell whether it was real or dreaming. She admitted that she was drinking. She admitted she had a bad memory. So the full context of what she said for certain was not placed in the DNA. And in my mind, that throws the whole DNA. In my mind, that throws the whole probable cause affidavit in doubt. So good points, good points. The very last comment we have is for you, Courtney.
All right. Deborah. The blood on the railing does fit Bethany Funk's story of a naked man running out the front door. Then, who did Dylan Mortensen see? It fits the scenario of a two-person crime.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, if that's true, it would be nice to have Bethany Funk's full statement. A long time ago, back in April of 2023, is when this naked man running out the door comment first came up. And of course, we know now that there is a transcript of a statement that Dylan Mortensen had given right after the crimes. There's got to be one with Bethany Funk. Remember the affidavit that Bethany Funk, an investigator, actually wrote on an affidavit that she has exculpatory information. and that has never been made public. We don't know what it is. So, as I have always said, Bethany, Funk, and Dylan Mortensen are the keys to this case. Whether they testify, whether they take the fifth, it's just so important that we find out what they said. And people have said in the past they hear us talking about them, and they say that I'm vilifying them or that I'm judgmental. No.
I wouldn't say that you're judgmental. I would say that their position in the whole situation is very strange, and their behavior is very strange. So it leaves a lot of room for questions.
Thank you.
Like why did they call the police? If they were calling out, if one of them was calling out for the girls in the house and nobody was coming and they thought they heard screaming and crying, why wouldn't they have done anything? I lived with roommates before, and if I heard anything that was strange or out of the ordinary, I would go to them immediately, no matter what. Why didn't they call the police right away? I don't know. It's just not making sense to me. And like we have discussed prior, like, were they on something that maybe she thought she was hallucinating? Or, was she, I don't know. It's just not adding up. So I don't think that you're villainizing them. I think it's just there's just too much unanswered. Yeah, so how can you paint a great picture of them when their behavior is very, very odd? Very odd.
I agree 100%. And the thing is that I don't want to vilify anything. I've said before, I have a lot of compassion for the two girls.
Of course, it's very sad and unfortunate, but their behavior also is very strange. So it's not really adding up.
No, I agree 100%. But what I was going to say is, I have a lot of compassion. I can't imagine what it would have been like. I had roommates when I was in college. And I can't imagine what it would be like to have something like this happen. It would be an outrageous thing. And I'm not judging these people. I'm analyzing what the veracity of a witness will be in a case in which 90% of the case will rely on the testimony of these two witnesses. And so we're just analyzing. We've analyzed everything. We've been left with nothing else. We've been left with a PCA that's fallen apart, in my view, because so much of it is just so shaky, especially the stalking thing and the thing about Dylan saying certain things, and now we know that she herself was not even sure of those things. That's for a whole nother episode to get into the PCA and all of the flaws in that document. So that's all we have, and if that's all we have, we're going to analyze it. And I do feel a lot for the two young girls, but what they saw is what they saw, and it has been a couple of years now, and it's.
Yeah, what they saw and what they saw, but then what they did after that too.
What did they do in those 8 hours? What did they do?
Yeah, that's a very, very strange.
Why do you call friends over, and how many people were standing around waiting when the police got there? That's just it bothers a lot of us. It's not just me. Give me your nasty comments all you want. I've heard them, as you know, but it is a major question, and I'm not the only person out here that's questioning. That 8 hours. What did they do?
Or like you said, or like I had said, maybe they were on some type of drug and they were like hallucinating and they just didn't know what to do. And again, we're just dissecting to see, what would have made them act in the manner that they acted. Why would they call the friends? Why would they have called police? What's going on there?
And how can anything in the crime scene be taken seriously when it was 8 hours? You've been
8 hours and all of these people coming in and out, like the John Benet Ramsey case, the crime scene was contaminated right away.
And here we had 8 hours from the time that the crimes occurred, allegedly, according to the police timeline, and the time that 911 was called at 11:58. And to me, that's a big problem for law enforcement, to somehow say what they found at the crime scene is even valid, legitimate, authentic evidence. We don't that. I don't know. And Brett Payton didn't even get to the crime scene until 4:00 in the afternoon. If 911 was called at 11:58, he at some point was given the title of the officer in charge, who was the lead investigator. So I'm not going to say that our commenter who said that it could be a plan, I'm not going to say they're wrong. I'm not going to say they're right. It's a valid, legitimate question, and I think it's a question that any juror with any analytical ability would ask. I was gonna put it a different way. I was gonna say anybody with half a brain is gonna ask.
Yeah.
But I was nice about it. I said, I think anybody with any analytical ability should get a juror of people that are educated. You get and of course, a lot of universities in that area of Idaho and Ada County, where the jury is going to come from. Anybody with half a brain is going to question a lot of things about this case, and those are some of the top questions. So we always end the episode by pointing out that this case is about the 4 victims, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. And we all have to remember that this is about them, and that we do hope that whatever this means, that there is justice for them and their families can figure out, what it was that happened. Because what a horrible tragedy. What a horrible tragedy. And, we do always have to go back to that. So, Courtney, I always ask you in the end, do you have any closing thoughts here today?
No, I just gave mine.
Okay. All right. And so to summarize, I think you're just saying there are a lot of questions about the conduct of the 2 girls.
Yeah, I just think their behavior is very odd, and it's just not adding up.
Okay, so let us know what you think. These were the comments that we got this week. We always ask you to give us your comments at the end of the episode because it gives us ideas. We've often generated new content based on things that you see, hear, and feel about these cases. And so thanks for joining us. Have a good week. Whether you are in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.